Hello everyone, thank you for joining the webinar this morning. My name is Jonathan. I'm the marketing manager at Retail Realm. Today's presenter is Dan Jablons from Retail Smart Guys. Dan is going to be talking about how to make more cash for you and your retailers. As always, please feel free to submit your questions throughout the webinar, and then towards the end we'll get to them. We'll get a Q&A going, and we'll also be recording this webinar, and it'll be available on the Retail Realm YouTube page for offline viewing. Okay, Dan, so whenever you're ready, take it away, please.
All right. Well, thanks, Jonathan, and thanks for setting this up for me. And hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're gonna go through basically, as I understand, there's two groups of people here. There's the retailers that are here, and there's also some of you guys that distribute products for Retail Realm. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to go through first for you guys that are retailers, I want to first go through the pieces that I think will be important to you in terms of how you guys can make more money for your retail stores. And those of you guys that are distributors of Retail Realm, I think it'll be interesting for you to see just basically, how a retailer thinks about those things. How does that work? And then at the end of that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what you guys as resellers might do to add some of these services to your suite of services, because I think there's some profit opportunities for you guys there as well. Okay? All right, let's get started. A lot of what's in this webinar is based on this book by Russell Conwell called Acres of Diamonds. And it's a great book. I recommend it. In that book, he recommends that you look in your own backyard. And for those of you that are retailers, when I talk to retailers a lot and I say, where's your growth going to come from? A lot of times they say things like, well, I got to find the next amazing line, or I got to find the next killer salesperson, or I got to move the store or open another location. You'll notice that all of those, though, are external to the whole deal, right? What Russell Conwell is saying is a lot of this stuff is internal, and you got to look inside your organization first, because there's lots of places internally where you can find amazing levels of revenue by just tweaking a couple of things. I'm going to show you some examples of that one. Okay. Now, what you're about to see is not theory. These are actual examples from actual retail stores that we're working with, and this is their results based on the things that they did. Okay. So here we go. A couple of ground rules here. First of all, there's a couple of things I want you to be willing to do. The first thing is you got to be willing to look at some key metrics and some stats, and a lot of those stats are available to you right inside the products you get from Retail Realm. So you got to look at those statistics. I can't tell you how many times when I've talked to retailers and I ask them what reports do you run or what do you look at, they look at whatever they need to close the drawer, and maybe they look at a couple of bestseller reports, and that's about it. They need to start looking at, what do you have on hand? What do you have on order? What did you receive that we need to sell through? Transfers are an important one too for multi-store guys. So are we just looking only at the top line statistics? We got to dig a little deeper than that. So we got to look at those key metrics. We got to be willing to change what we've done. If you do what you've always done, you get what you've always gotten or less. I didn't invent that saying, but man, it sure is true. There's a lot of things that you need to now look at differently. Retailers are on the bleeding edge of the marketplace, and so as such, you guys have got to adjust and change on a regular basis. And lastly, you got to be willing to act. You got to be willing to change things. You got to be willing to look at it differently than how it's been. Because if you don't make any changes after doing the analysis and after looking at all the things that that I'm going to suggest to you today, well, then nothing will change for you. So, you got to be willing to act, make a decision. Even if that decision goes wrong, you dust yourself off and get back up and do it again. Okay? Here's the first tweak, okay, and it's called selling cost, and let me give this one to you. Basically what it is it's the payroll that you pay someone divided by the revenue they generate. So as an example, if I have an employee and I pay them $1,700 for being at the store in the month of January, and they sell $12,500 worth of merchandise, their selling cost is 13.6%, right? 1,700 divided by 12,500. Now, actually, that's a pretty high number. And it depends on where in the country you guys are listening in from. Some of the more urban areas, the selling costs can be higher, and more in the middle of the country it gets a little lower based on cost of living, and those sorts of things. But it is a key statistic to watch. Now, here's a store whose expenses are 42% of sales. Their fixed expenses, rent and utilities and some of their loans, are fixed at 23% of sales. Okay, their variable expenses were 19%, and selling payroll was 12%. Okay, so we said, okay, well, what if we could knock that down a little bit? What if we could take the selling expense from 12% to 10%? What would that mean to the profitability of the store? Well, take a look. On this slide, what you can see is the original situation. They sold 750,616, and we didn't really change that. Kept that the same way. Fixed expenses didn't change. They went from 172,493 to 172,493. They're the same. But the variable expenses went from 142,577 to 127,498 by lowering the selling cost 2%. That 2% reduction there produces $15,000 more to the bottom line, right? Profit before cost of goods goes from 435 to 450. It's another $15,000, okay? Just by adjusting and changing that one thing, okay? Now, how do you change that? You get smarter about scheduling. You look for places where you've got more people on the floor than maybe you need, and maybe you get a better commission plan out there that does a better job of compensating people when they hit goals as opposed to just paying them from the first dollar. I could probably do a whole webinar just on commission pay plans, to be frank with you. But getting your selling cost under control and being done the right way, you can see in a $750,000 business produces another $15,000 in cash. And because these are percentages, if you're a bigger business, the stuff that falls to the bottom line is even bigger. All right, the next one is markdowns. Now, markdowns are one of the top 3 expenses, right there with rent and with payroll. Okay? And if you understood how to manage the markdowns better, and I find that most independent retailers do not have a markdown strategy. They don't look at that and say, okay, I landed on this date. Now, 8 weeks later, I'm going to take my first markdown, 12 weeks, the second markdown, et cetera. You know, and your competitors do that. Your bigger stores do that for sure. Let's look at an example of improving markdowns. Here again, I'm looking to just improve it by 2%. So if you look at this one, based on 55% initial markup, okay, a store that does the exact same volume, 749, 694, but I reduced their markdowns from 21% to 19%, just a 2% reduction, right? Which means instead of spending $157,000 on markdowns, I'm spending $142,000 on markdowns. That causes me to actually have a 1-point increase in my gross profit. And it generates, instead of 341, 348, or basically another 74.87 in cash improvement. Okay? So just by improving my markdowns by 2%, we got that. Now, you can say to me, well, yeah, okay, just improve markdowns. Thanks, Dan. Good tip there. But maybe you can tell me how to do that, right? Well, what causes markdowns is the key to it, right? Markdowns, really, you could break them down into 2 areas. They get driven first on the sales floor if, number one, your salespeople don't understand the product, don't have enough product knowledge, don't know how to sell it, don't believe in it, don't like it. You know, those are all things you've got to overcome on the selling floor, okay? Sometimes also you'll see on the selling floor things like, yes, I did get them to try this thing on. Yes, I did get them to look at it, but there were fit issues, or there were color issues, or we're getting lots of returns because it didn't hold up well, or something like that. Okay, so that's the selling part of it, right? Did they like it? Do they understand it? Do they have enough product knowledge to talk about it? Those kinds of things. On the buying side, which is really frankly the larger cause of markdowns, it's I got the goods late, so I missed the season, or I bought more than I could possibly sell in a season. Okay, or maybe, you know, the way I'm buying is not based on any kind of real analysis out there, so I don't have a way to look at it and say, what should I be bringing in, because I have an insufficient department class structure, or I just haven't done my homework before that starts, okay? I haven't thought through my assortment plan. I haven't thought about, you know, is it too broad of an assortment, too narrow of an assortment? Am I not deep enough? Did I not land the goods? Did I not flow them well enough? You know, those are all reasons why markdowns happen. You got to look at the flow of merchandise, the flow of inventory, and make sure that your salespeople understand it at the same time. As long as we just jump back to the salespeople for a moment, here's one thing I can tell you. It's kind of a great tip, and if you take nothing else away from this webinar. That last line at the bottom in red is probably the most important one, which is that every time you sell an extra item, you avoid a future markdown. Every time you sell an extra item, you avoid a future markdown. So get your staff to be thinking with and understanding units per transaction and average dollar sale and those kinds of statistics, right? But basically, every time you sell an item, you avoid a markdown. That means get them to sell one more item every time they get in front of a customer. Just one more item. You'll be amazed at the effect it has both on your bottom line, your sales, and also how your customers react to the store. Okay, last little tweak you have for you is purchases. Now this one's the one you spend the most money on out of all, right? Your inventory is where most of your dollars go. So we got to make sure we do that one right, and that one means we've got to time the inventory right, and we've got to flow it right, and we've got to make sure that we're meeting the demand properly. Okay, well, how do you do that? Okay, well, look at this situation. Again, the revenue doesn't change. I'm not looking to increase revenue to generate more cash. Okay, what I am saying is if I can get the purchases from 55% down to 53%, again, just a 2% improvement. It means that I'm only going to spend $398, not $413. Okay, that means that my available money after that for expenses goes from $338 to $353, and I pick up $15,000 there. Again, it's a 3.6% increase in your profit. Okay, well, all right. How do we do that? Okay, you can't do it by just going, okay, I'm going to cut 2% of my purchases all the way across the board, right? You can't call up to a vendor and say, I know you usually ship me 12 T-shirts, now ship me 11. They won't do that, okay? So what you have to do when you're getting into that kind of situation is you have to make sure that you pick out the classes that you're going to play offense in and the classes you're going to play defense in. That's a hugely important thing. Where am I going to play offense? Where am I going to play defense? Not all classes are the same. The ones that are growing need to be fed. The ones that are shrinking need to be monitored and repaired, and maybe they can grow again. And the ones that are dying just need to get shut down. I mean, it's just sort of no other way to do it, okay? And at the same time, by the way, you can't just look at your numbers and shut off the flow of inventory, because if you don't bring in fresh goods and your customers see the same stuff all the time, they're not going to come back to the store. They figure they know what you've got going on. So you can't make knee-jerk reactions here. You can't make overarching decisions here. You've got to look at it on a class-by-class basis. That starts by forecasting on a class-by-class basis. And forecasting is not last year plus or minus 10% or something like that. It's actually looking at how that class is performing this year and how it's trending this year, in addition to some last year information as a guideline. But as an example, for those of you that are in the fashion business, especially women's fashion, you know, a year ago, jackets were mediocre, not great. Now they're on fire. If you planned your inventory and your sales based on what happened last year, you'd miss a ton of business. So you've got to look at the current trends. You've got to look at industry trends. Again, just as long as we're on the topic of women's fashion, this year we're seeing that women's fashions, especially in skirts, especially in printed T-shirts and novelty sweaters, is off the charts. That's a current industry trend. That's not a last year plus a percentage. When you do these forecasts and you kind of collect up all this data, your current trends and how you and what you want the store to look like and how you expect that to go and that sort of thing, you've got to do these forecasts month by month. You can't do the forecast like one forecast for the whole year. Why can't you do that? You can't do that because you need to be able to peak and valley your inventory. Okay? You can't just have the inventory at a super high rate or at the same rate every single month. It's got to be different every single month. So you know, right now a lot of retailers here in October are peaking their inventory, and then they're going to drop it down as they get to the end of the year, because obviously we want to finish December after the holiday is done with as little inventory as possible, right? So that's the deal there. We want to make sure that we peak the inventory at the start of the holiday and we value it out at the end, and that's how you make money, really, by targeting your inventory. So let's look at the inventory planning. If I've come up with a really great sales forecast, okay, and I know what I'm going to sell month by month by month, okay, now I've got to plan what's my inventory going to look like to hit that without underbuying and missing sales or overbuying and tying up cash unnecessarily, right, and driving markdowns. The key to this is the stock-to-sales ratio. We have to be able to figure out how much inventory we want on the floor based on what my sales look like, right? So as an example, if stock-to-sales ratio just means that for every piece that I've sold, how many pieces did I have on the floor, right? So if I have a 3 stock-to-sales ratio, it means for every piece I sold, I have 3 pieces on hand. Now, again, when you're peaking the inventory in anticipation of like a holiday season or something like that, you'll have a high stock-to-sales ratio. You're going to load up the store with inventory. You want to make sure when people look at your store, they go, wow, anything I could possibly want to buy for a gift for someone is there. That's why I'm going to want to go back, okay? But by the time we get down to the end of December, where we pretty much sold through everything we landed for holiday, we should have a low stock-to-sales ratio. At that point, we just have what's left, and whatever's left is probably going to get marked down anyway because we're going to start bringing in fresh goods in January for spring, okay? So planning that stock-to-sales ratio means it's going to move month by month by month, okay? We also have to come up with an assortment plan. How are we going to break down that assortment by vendor, by color, by price point, by size? How much is basics? How much is fashion? How much is what we call cachet merchandise, where it's stuff that's just like, it's out there, but it's stuff that customers want to come and see, okay? That's all part of the assortment plan after you've planned what your inventory is going to be based on the stock-to-sales ratio. Lastly, you're going to flow that inventory in there so there's something new and exciting and different every single month. I talked a little bit about that one already. But basically, you've got to have something new and fresh and interesting for the customer to look at every single month, because if they come in this month and they see what they saw last month, they're not coming next month, okay? And with both of these, by the way, with both the sales planning and the sales forecasting and the inventory planning, you want to make sure you've monitored the results, because you might do a sales forecast based on some assumptions and then go, wow, some of those assumptions were not correct, and so my forecast was not correct, and you may have to adjust it. By the way, that's not just always adjusting down. Sometimes it's adjusting up. You thought, you know, hey, I'm going to sell some sweaters, and suddenly you realize that you've got some really killer sweaters that's resonated with your marketplace, and you're blowing them out. You're going to have to adjust your forecast up. But if I take a look at these 3 things that we just did, the selling costs, the markdowns, and the purchases, you'll notice that all 3 of them are improved just by 2%. But if I actually did all 3 of those things in a store that was doing $750,000 a year roughly on average, okay, I could produce another $37,599 in cash on the exact same volume. Let that sit for a second. Another $37,000 in cash on the exact same volume. And that's what we talk about when we say these are the diamonds that are in your own backyard. Okay? All right. So that was the retailer section of the whole thing. And you can see where I hope those of you that are retailers on the phone can see this is where I can actually make some significant money. Now, what about you guys that are selling hardware and software and services right now? How do you make money in all of this? And can you grow your business by growing your retailer's business? Well, obviously, I think that's true. So let me walk through that with you a little bit. Okay. First off, I probably should have started with this one, but who are we? You know, who is Retail Smart Guys? Well, Retail Smart Guys are award-winning open-to-buy consultants. Open-to-buy means we help them with their sales forecast, and then we help them with an inventory plan that hits that sales forecast, right? We currently plan for 500 retailers. Now, a retailer is a customer. They may have multiple locations, so it's a lot more doors than that. But we currently plan for 500 retailers in 14 different countries. And we're the only open-to-buy solution in the world with a link to RMS. In fact, if you go to the Microsoft website and you search open-to-buy, we're the only ones that show up. Now, how do we help you retailers? Well, by giving them better sales forecasts and by giving them better inventory plans, okay? Last year, our average customer saw an 18% increase in sales and also got an 11% decrease in inventory. Now, that's a fairly impressive change in someone's business, right? 18% more sales and doing it by investing 11% less in their inventory. That's a pretty impressive thing. But, you know, a lot of people just don't think about how they invest their inventory. So once we get them on a really good plan, they actually can make those improvements. At the same time this year, so far this year through end of September, we've seen a 12% increase in sales and a 13% decrease in inventory, and we're expecting that we're going to have a strong fourth quarter all the forecasts we see out there see that selling is going to be good the fourth quarter. So we're expecting to see something close to what happened last year. Okay? Now, how do we help you guys that are distributors? In the beginning, we just ask that you refer us to a client, either by just, calling us up and saying, hey, I got this guy, it's ABC Retail, this is what they do, and they need some help, or we can do a webinar for your clients, for your retailers that are doing this, okay? At the end of the webinar, we'll offer them a free inventory analysis, okay? That way we're going to help them understand where their business could be improved, okay, and what that would mean in terms of dollars and cents if they made that happen. But we're keeping you involved every step of the way. So it isn't like, introduce us and run away unless you want to. If that's what you want to do, we're happy to do that. We'll still compensate you. But we like it better when you guys are involved. And I'll tell you why here in a sec, okay? We want you to watch how we sell the product. We want you to see how that goes down. We want you to watch how we deliver the product. And once you've seen us sell it and deliver it, then I want you to decide, hey, you know what? I've got a guy in my organization. He would be great at doing this, or I would be great at doing this, okay? And at that point in time, when you do that one, if you decide that you want to do that, we'll get you trained in it, we'll teach you how to sell it, and we'll give you a lifetime ongoing mentorship. I'll show that more in a minute, okay? But basically, the other reason we want you guys involved so much is that part of what happens in this process is that there's a great synergy that gets developed between your point-of-sale system and our planning system. I often use this example. The point-of-sale is kind of like the spinal column of the store. A store cannot exist without a point-of-sale system, that's for sure, okay? But when you take a point-of-sale system and you combine planning and looking out ahead with those things, you kind of combine the plan and the looking ahead stuff, like the brain stuff, with the spinal column, and now you've got like a real living entity there that's moving someplace, that's going forward. In doing that planning, very often it will happen that we'll say, well, you need to take some markdowns. And the customer will say, well, I don't know how to do that. And we push them back to you guys to purchase additional training services from you. So that's why I say there's a real synergy that happens there. Now, you can choose to just be someone who refers business to us if that's how you want to do it. If you see this stuff and, yeah, it makes sense, but it's not for me, it's not my model, it's not what I want to do, you can just refer us when you get customers that either have cash flow issues or say to you, I want to plan my business better, I want to get involved in open and buy, that sort of thing, okay? Or you can choose to expand your involvement and become someone who sells and delivers this product for us, okay? If you do that, obviously there's greater revenue for you, there's greater opportunities for you, and I think there's opportunities for you to sell deeper into your suite of services, okay? Either way you do it, whether you will become a referral person for us or if you actually want to start delivering it, we'll support you either way, okay? If you do become someone who delivers this, okay, what does it mean? It means, first off, that you get free training and certification in our product. So we'll train you for free. We have a certification that happens in Tucson a couple of times a year. You just have to get there. If you get there, everything else is free, okay? You get free lifetime mentoring from open to buy specialists that are doing this 20, 25 years. So let's just say you actually sell someone and now you've got to deliver the open to buy plans to them. And you're like, oh my God, I got to actually deliver this. Before you even start, the mentors will get with you, look at the plans with you, and figure out with you, what are you going to say to these people? And what's the strategy that you want to employ to grow these people's business? Okay? Not only that, but you'll be connecting that to a network of planners and retail consultants who, A, can probably refer more POS business to you because we are often asked what's the best POS out there. And often they're on POS platforms that they don't particularly like, and they are interested in maybe looking at something else. Okay? But also, sometimes you're working with a client and you're not sure what to do with them. As a great example, I have a jewelry client in Boston, and they have tons and tons and tons and tons of excess inventory. I mean, more than I've ever seen a store ever have in all of the years that I'm doing this. And so I went back to the network and I said, what do I do here, guys? I got a guy who's got, close to $1.5 million worth of jewelry inventory, and he does like $500,000 a year. It literally was that. He had like 3 times the inventory he needs, and by working with the other people in the network, I got some ideas about what we could do, and actually now we're whittling away at that old inventory. It's going to take us a little while to get through that, but he's actually profitably turning his existing inventory. So he's still making money even though he's way over-inventoried and saddled with a whole bunch of goods he's going to have to find his way through. That's part of the great thing of being part of that network. I'm sure some of that is part of the Retail Realm network too. I mean, you guys also have access to, we're just one of many great products that are in the Retail Realm network that we're honored to be a part of. But, you know, part of this also is developing the strategy for your retailers so that their business grows. And if their business grows, they're going to buy more products and services from you. And one of the partners actually said this thing to me, which I thought was really kind of interesting. He said, for the first time ever, I feel like I'm sitting on the same side of the table as my customer is, because I'm helping them negotiate what they're doing with their sales, what they're doing with their inventory. I'm helping them build their business. And so we have a real partnership, a really strong and committed partnership. Okay. By the way, well, this was for yesterday's class, but just so you guys know, I'm going to be teaching a class in Dubai here in a couple of weeks. So if you know of any people in Dubai, certainly please encourage them to look at the University of Dubai website, because I'm going to be doing this there. So for those of you that are retailers, here's that free inventory analysis that I talked about kind of earlier on. So if you'd like us to look at your inventory and your sales and your expenses and have us tell you, if you were a client, what would we do for you, what do we think would happen, and what the actual dollars and cents of that would be. Okay, I don't want to just sort of say all kinds of magical things. We're very numeric people, so when I consider taking on a new client, one of the first things we look at is, how would we help that client? What would we do for them? What would that be worth to that client? And is there a return on investment? Okay, if you are a Retail Realm distributor, this inventory analysis is something you can offer to any of your retail clients, and I can do the first half of this seminar. I have a slightly longer version of that, obviously, that we can do for your clients. Okay? So for the retailers, I hope you looked at those three things that you can tweak, the selling expense, markdowns, and looking at your purchases. For those of you that are resellers, I hope you look at some of these consulting services that you might add to your suite of services, so that you actually get some more value to your retailers and grow your business as well. We will be there, by the way, at the Retail Realm Conference that happens in April of 2015, so we will be there, and I look forward to meeting a lot of you guys there. But with that, that's this presentation. So, Jonathan, if you have questions, I'm ready for those.